Okay, so today we'll be discussing about Listeria monocytogenes. Listeria is basically a gram-positive facultative intracellular bacilli which is catalase positive. Okay, so how is it acquired by the human it is either by the ingestion of unpasteurized dairy products or by ingestion of cold meats, or it can even transferred by vertical transmission, that is transplacental transmission, or by vaginal transmission during the birth. Okay, also one thing to be noted over here is that the acquisition of listeria is inversely proportional to the gastric acidity. That means the patients with less acidity of the stomach, that means less acid production, that means more pH, that is the patients who are, for example, on proton pump inhibitors, they are more prone to acquire the infection by Listeria monocytogenes. Okay, also one thing to be noted over here is the pathogenic serotype of Listeria is 1 or 2A, 1 or 2B or 4. Okay, this is the serotype which is pathogenic. Now, one special property of Listeria is, unlike many other bacterium, it grows pretty well at refrigeration temperature, and this is known as cold enrichment. Okay, so one thing you have, the few points which you have to take in your head over here is a history of unpasteurized dairy product intake or meat intake, or transplacental, mother who was infected with Listeria might have a child infected with the same, or a history of vaginal transmission, or a patient on PPIs. This is some important keywords that is to be noted over here. Now, how does Listeria cause its manifestation? How does Listeria spread? Basically, Listeria when ingested reaches the intestine, and after reaching the intestine via internalin protein, it is internalized into the intestinal epithelium, after which it is internalized by the phagosome. Okay, now this Listeria has something known as listeriolysin. Now what this listeriolysin does is basically it creates pores in the phagosome and helps this Listeria to escape out into the cytoplasm. Okay, after the Listeria escapes out into the cytoplasm, it causes nucleation of the host actin and subsequently causes actin polymerization. Now, with the help of this actin polymerization, this Listeria will travel all across the cytoplasm, and subsequently it will spread to maybe another intestinal epithelium or the macrophage. This is how Listeria spreads in the body. Okay, now as we talked, Listeria basically moves, so it shows motility, right? But one thing to be noticed over here is within the human body, it does not show any motility. But in a soy broth at 25 degrees Celsius, it shows tumbling motility. So this thing having two top types of motility is known as differential motility, which is a characteristic feature of Listeria. Okay, now what manifestation, what can the patient present to you with? In pregnant patients, there could be fetal anomalies, there could be spontaneous abortions, there could be septicemia, and there could also be amnionitis. Now, in immunocompromised patient, Listeria can cause meningitis. Listeria can also cause meningitis in neonates as well as older adults, because even neonates and older adults have lesser immunity compared to normal healthy adults, right? It can cause a self-limiting gastroenteritis in healthy individuals, and something very important to be noted over here, it can cause a grave disease known as granulomatosis infantiseptica. Okay, discussing it, in neonates, Listeria can cause two types of diseases. One is early onset and the other is late onset. As the name suggests, early onset happens within the first 5 days of birth. If it is happening within the first 5 days of birth, we can apply our logic and we can say that over here the infection is acquired from the maternal genital flora during vaginal delivery. Okay, over here in early onset neonatal disease, there will be a history of obstetrical complication with the baby, such as premature delivery or low birth weight, and most commonly it presents as sepsis. Okay, and the grave form over here is known as granulomatosis infantiseptica. Okay, infantiseptica, as there is sepsis in the infant. Granulomatosis, why? Because there are miliary microabscesses and granulomas in the skin, liver and spleen. That is why granulomatosis infantiseptica. That is the early onset disease. Okay, In early onset disease, the mortality is up to 50%. Okay, and obviously since it is acquired by the maternal genital fluid, there won't be any outbreaks as such. Late onset, on the other hand, is acquired after 5 days of birth. The mean age to be considered over here is around 14 to 15 days. It is acquired from the environment, mostly the hospital environment. It is not associated with any obstetrical complications as such, and the most common form it can present is the meningitis, neonatal meningitis. Okay, mortality rate is pretty low, and since there is environmental spread, so it can cause outbreaks. Okay, so this is about the listeria's manifestation in neonates. Now, once you are suspecting that the patient might have listeria, we must do lab diagnosis. Okay, so what can we do? Suppose if the pregnant female is arriving with amnionitis, you can collect the sample from the amniotic fluid, or if there is meningitis or anything of that sort, you can collect CSF. After this, what we can do is, number one, we can do gram staining. So we'll see gram positive and gram positive bacillus form, right? Also, we can do motility testing. So at 25 degrees Celsius, listeria will show tumbling motility. Also, from the CSF or amniotic fluid, we can do culture. We can culture it on either chocolate agar or Palcam agar. Palcam stands for polymyxin, acreflavin, lithium chloride, ceftazimide, esculin, and mannitol agar. Okay. Next thing, so listeria will grow on these two. Next thing which we can appreciate in listeria is cold enrichment. As we talked about, listeria can grow pretty well in refrigerated temperatures as well. Now, one thing special to be noted over here is listeria monocytogenes can be differentiated from the other listeria by CAMP test. CAMP test, I'll be just telling you very briefly, and the rest we'll be covering in our subsequent video on Streptococcus pyogenes. So there is a CAMP test in which what we do is basically you strike Streptococcus in the between, and then you perpendicularly strike the other bacterium. What happens is, near this zone, since listeria is also a hemolytic bacteria, what will happen is this is the intersecting point. Over here the hemolysis is too much, so basically an arrow shaped hemolytic area will be formed. This is known as CAMP test. Okay, now once we are sure that this is listeria, what we subsequently do is we can treat it, right? So if the patient is presented to us with meningitis, we can treat the patient with ampicillin. In other cases also we can treat the patient with ampicillin. In case of meningitis, we also add gentamicin to it, and the course continues for around 2 to 3 weeks. If the patient is allergic to ampicillin, we can give the patient cotrimoxazole, and if the patient is presenting with gastroenteritis, we can give the patient amoxicillin. One thing very important to be noted over here is which antibiotics we should not give in listeria. We should not give cephalosporins. We should not give chloramphenicol. Why? Because they are not active inside the human, that particular cell which is infected by listeria. Also, vancomycin, linezolid, macrolides, and tetracyclines are usually avoided. Okay, so summing up the entire topic, Listeria monocytogenes is a gram-positive facultative intracellular bacilli. It is acquired by the ingestion of unpasteurized dairy products, meat, or transplacental or vaginal transmission. It shows the property of cold enrichment. It spreads within the intestinal epithelium. It is internalized by internalin, which subsequently goes to phagosome. Phagosome, it basically creates spores using listeriolysin, and after that, via actin polymerization, it can spread to other cells. Okay, characteristic tumbling motility is seen in case of listeria at 25 degrees Celsius in soy broth. It can cause amnionitis, septicemia, spontaneous abortion in pregnant patients. It can cause granulomatosis, infantis septica, or meningitis in neonates depending on early and late onset, right? In immunocompromised as well as older adults, it can show meningitis, and in healthy individuals, it shows self-limiting gastroenteritis. This is the lab diagnosis. We collect the sample, we do gram staining, motility, we do culture plating. In chocolate agar, it shows beta hemolytic colonies. We can also do a special Palcam agar. Then we can do cold enrichment. We can differentiate Listeria monocytogenes from others by CAMP test. After we are sure about that the thing is listeria, we can treat the patient with ampicillin in normal case, or we can treat the patient with ampicillin plus gentamicin in case of meningitis, which continues for 2 to 3 weeks. If the patient is found allergic, we can go cotrimoxazole, and in case of gastroenteritis, we can give amoxicillin. Antibiotics which we should avoid is cephalosporin and chloramphenicol, and usually we do not prefer giving vancomycin, linezolid, macrolides, and tetracyclines. So this sums up listeria for us.